My name is Stephanie Schmitz. I have never been to a 3-day music festival, let alone country music. I didn't even like country music until probably 2 years ago. I was very, it's trucks and dogs and girlfriend broke up with me, and until a friend sat me down and really had me listen to some of the music and the words of the music, and I fell in love with the idea of men singing about love and found a new love of music. And so this country festival was supposed to be a time of celebration for my sister and I for our birthdays. My birthday's at the end of September and hers is at the end of October, and we just felt that this would be a great sister getaway. And we had an amazing time. Although I was fighting illness from day one. Friday I felt exhausted, I was tired, worn down. I could tell that my body was fighting a cold. But when it comes to music and having a good time, I was not gonna let a silly old cold win. And we started Friday, and we called it early a little bit on Friday, realizing that we had to pace ourselves for 3 days worth of party and fun. And Saturday was an experience I will never forget on the good end of things. Got to see Sam Hunt, who is the love of my life, and I joked that he was going to propose to me that night. And just the atmosphere of love and love of country music, love of people was just thriving in that venue. And even that day, being there, we saw 4 different acts leading up to Jason Aldean, and it was amazing. Everybody was just having an amazing time, and again, just love of country was really the theme of the whole weekend. It really was. We had met up with some friends of mine from Vegas, 3 of our friends, Belinda, Olivia, and Colin, and they had 2 different tents set up. They had the main stage, and then they had the Next from Nashville, so the up and coming. And we met in the Nashville tent, and we were listening to some new artists and just being silly and making funny faces as we took pictures. And they had already started drinking, and so we were just laughing at how silly they were already acting. And we made our way to the main stage, and one thing I will remember is Big and Rich was on, and they were paying tribute to our veterans, and we all sang God Bless America and had our phones lit, and I have a recording of that. And for a fleeting moment, though, I will be honest, I thought to myself, we could really be pissing some people off right now with this, which you should never think when you're celebrating your country, when you're celebrating the land that you live in, the land that you love, and the thought that that's not okay and that might be unsafe. I felt guilty for that. So Jason Aldean was singing Any Old Barstool, and it's a song about kind of breaking up and where you end up in those times after a breakup. And that really spoke to me with everything that I had been going through over the last few years. And so I recorded a little bit of it. It was towards the end of the song, and we heard what we thought were firecrackers. It didn't sound like fireworks, and it didn't even sound like what you would think gunshots would sound like. It was pop, 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 pop. And I remember the woman next to me and I looked in that direction and said, "Knock it off, that's a sick joke. We're trying to enjoy a concert. Now's not the time." And Jason Aldean the song came to an end, and he said, "Okay, we're gonna kick it up a notch." And he started singing When She Calls Me Baby, which I absolutely love that song. And there was another ring of shots, which we now know are shots. And I remember looking off to my right and seeing a gentleman down who I now know is a San Bernardino County Sheriff's officer, and a woman holding him. And I looked up on stage and saw the look of Jason Aldean's face as he looked out on the crowd and saw people down, and he took off running. And then I looked at my sister, who was actually already on the ground, and she said, "Steph, get down." And all I said was, "This is a sick joke. This can't be real." And she said, "It is very real. You need to get down." I am not proud of my reaction. I never fully grasped what was going on, honestly. I knew at that moment that there was a woman that was facing me on the ground, and her and I just grabbed arms and just kept saying, "We're gonna be okay, we're gonna be okay." And I apparently was sitting on a girl behind me's foot, and she's like, "You're hurting me, you're hurting me." And I was like, "Pull your foot out, just go, do what you need to do." And at one point there was a break in the shots, and my sister grabbed my hand and said, "Let's go." And at that point, massive amounts of people just started moving because there was, like I said, a break in the shots. And again, it still didn't feel real to me. It didn't make sense. So as we were running, there was a container set up in the middle of the field where they were serving drinks throughout the night. And my sister was actually waved in by a gentleman that I know. His name is Joe. Just as a way to get away from flying bullets, honestly, and from the stampede of people. And as we were running, we had to crawl under a table, one of the big 8-foot tables. And somehow, and I still haven't fully processed how I got stuck under that table, but I got stuck and I couldn't get out from underneath the table. And there was people going over the table, there was people going under more tables, and all I can remember is just my sister had let my hand go, thinking that I was right behind her still going into this storage container. And all I can remember is just screaming, "Kim, help, help, I'm stuck, I can't get out, I can't make it." And at that point, shots had started ringing out again. And she came out of the storage container and grabbed my hand and literally pulled me into the container. And once we were in the container, there was about 25 other people in the container. There was a gentleman who had been shot in the thigh right by the front door. There was another girl that had been shot in the shoulder who was off to the side by the front door as well. And my sister and I were about halfway back in the container. And there was a woman, again, that was basically sitting in my lap. There was a younger girl to the side who was on the phone with her mom. And there was a couple sitting to my left. And shots just kept ringing out. And we all ducked down as far as we could. And the shots actually did go through the container. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought the container was protecting us. But luckily, they were high up, so none of us were injured inside once we were inside. And I believe there was 2 more rounds of shots while we were in the container. I may be off on that. But they had blocked the door open, which all of us were very insecure about because we didn't realize where the shots were coming from at the time. We thought that people had taken the field by foot and were coming after us with guns. And so sitting in that container, while it was the idea of safety and shelter, we really felt like sitting ducks. But what we know now is that we were actually pretty safe. And Joe and another gentleman had barricaded the door open up next to another container and moved a freezer up against the door. So even if they were on the field, they trying to get into where we were would have been very difficult. So after about, I want to say about 10 minutes after the shots had finally stopped, Joe and the other gentleman said, okay, we need you guys to calmly get up in a single file line and run as fast as you can, get off the field. And we did. And as we were leaving the container, the gentleman that was shot in the thigh looked like he was going into shock. He was starting to be very pale. He was sweating. And my sister stayed back and talked to them and told them how to put him into the shock position. And I was waiting outside the container because I wasn't going anywhere without my sister. And I saw people just throwing bodies onto tables and carrying tables with people on them, dragging bodies to this area where pickup trucks were lined up, just everyday people in their pickup trucks. And they were just throwing people into the back of these trucks, and the trucks were taking off and going to local hospitals. And so we took off in between the Tropicana and the Hooters parking lot, and we were running in between the cars in case more shots rang out so we could at least have something to hide behind. And we got to the MGM where we were staying, and at that time I had lost both my flip-flops. I had lost one before I even got into the container, and the other one I lost while running. And so my sister had given me her boots. And when we got to the hotel, she said, "Steph, I need to go back. I need to help." And my sister's EMT trained. She's been a lifeguard. She's amazing. And I knew if she was being called back that she would be kept safe. So I gave her boots back and we hugged. And I said, "Please just be safe. Be careful." So she went back, and I sat on the bench for a minute just crying hysterically. I looked down at my knee. My knee had been bleeding, and just everything sat in that moment. Survivor's guilt is a real thing. You wonder, why me? Why am I the lucky one? I definitely haven't come away unscathed. I definitely have emotional wounds that are nothing compared to the physical wounds that many are facing. And, I have my life. I get to wake up every morning. So it's hard. It's hard to call myself a survivor, because I don't know that I've earned that. Just being at a concert and running for my life, I don't know that that's a title that I've earned. But I am grateful. So very, very grateful. But I will tell you, there's a weight. There's a weight of 58 lives that did not make it. There's a weight of Well, you're here, there's a reason for it. You better live up to it. And that's hard. That's hard to struggle with, because I don't want to let down those 58 that aren't here. And I don't want to let down my purpose. I am so sorry. And there are no words that will ever take your pain away. But know that in those moments leading up to there was so much love, so much joy, so much hope for what the world has to offer. And they will forever be with me in my heart and in my soul. They will never be forgotten. Honestly, I feel like I'm neurotic, constantly on hyper awareness, constantly afraid of what can happen next, and angry about that, because that's not how I've ever lived my life. I've always been in the moment, very just seeing the beauty, seeing the little things, not having to think about what direction I need to run in if something happens. And every day gets a little bit easier. And by a little bit, I mean microscopic, but it's a whole new world. And it's one that it's not as friendly as I thought it was. So the Branding Iron in San Bernardino held a candlelight vigil on Friday following the shooting. And I have only been to a country western bar a couple of times. It's kind of not my thing. I don't know how to country line dance or anything like that. But again, just there's so much love in the country music world. And so I felt called to be there. And I had put out a post on Facebook, and not many of my friends are country music listeners either. And so I posted it on one of the forums that I'm a part of and said, I'm going to be there, and I just don't know that I can do this alone. And my amazing best friend, Justin, came with me. Not only as support, but to document it, because it was something that I needed to remember, a good that came from this. And I had gotten a couple of posts on the forum, a couple of replies to my post that we'll see you there. And, people say things fleeting, oh yeah, we'll see each other there. But you don't think that you're going to be met with 5 beautiful smiling faces who just embrace you the minute they see you, never have met in person. And the moment that you lay eyes on each other, they just wrap their arms around you and tell you how grateful that they are that you're there. I've never experienced anything like that. In the moment that we lit those candles in honor of those that aren't with us anymore, tears of love fell from our faces. And an understanding that if you weren't there, you can't fully grasp. And I thank God for that, because going through this is not something you'd wish on anyone. But in that moment, knowing that those people in that room got it, and that we were in that moment together, in that moment of love, and for a moment, peace and remembrance, was definitely a step in the healing process. Definitely.